We're talking about Gig Performer, and today we'll do a basic introduction. We have 4 different buttons up here: Panels, Edit, Wiring, and Setlist. Let's start on the left. Panels is the overview where you have all your rack spaces. You can build panels. You can place various items into the panels, and I will show you that again shortly. I will show you a few examples of how I use them with switches that are controlled via controllers. Here is a bit more, and for example with songs that have organs, the drawbars are included. And here I have my XR, so my XR18 as a submixer. Then we can go to Edit here, and I can populate my panel with the items that we find here on the left. It has evolved over time, and some things make more or less sense to someone. Here, for example, you don't necessarily have to include an expression pedal or a system pedal. The system pedal works automatically in the first step anyway, unless you want a special solution. Then we have the wiring here, where you set up your set, and I will show that in detail as well. And here you have the setlist mode. I can create songs and assign a rack space to the songs. For example, if I have a standard rack space with piano and strings, I can assign it to these songs multiple times. Since I have a separate rack space for each song, I end up with as many rack spaces as there are songs. And here you can also split, for example, intro, verse, chorus, and then you can jump back and forth between the individual parts. That's pretty cool. We have a tuner up here, mainly for guitarists, which I don't need right now. Up here you can see the current tempo. There are several ways to adjust the tempo. You can do it globally, within the rack spaces, in these variations, and also here. We will take a closer look at this in detail. Then you can set the time signature here. So basically, here is the tempo. The time signature is very precise. I can also create a transpose, so I can transpose up and down. And there is an Ableton link. I haven't used that yet because I don't use it. Then I have the metronome here. I can press start and stop here. If I click on it, the thing runs. You can hear it now through the speakers. I can basically turn it on and off here as well. Then you can change the volume that goes out in both directions. This is very good, which is why I have it assigned to a knob. Up here you can see if a mini signal is coming in. Here you can see the CPU load, which of course changes with each song. And here we have a panic button that can also be assigned to a controller. This is the overview up here. Then we have the recorder button down here. When you click on it, you can record everything. Or you can record the outputs, but also the inputs directly. They are then saved in this folder here. Then you have the inputs available here, or you can see the inputs of the audio interface. You can see here, you can make it clearly larger, and you can also collapse it here. And here you can see the outputs of the selected audio interface. So I would say this gives a nice overview. Let's take a look at some exciting things up here. You can't see it up there now, as I have unfortunately hidden it. At the top, there are the menus: Gig Performer, File, Edit, View, Options, Window, and Help. This is the Gig Performer menu. There is nothing exciting in here for us right now. Under File, you can create a new project. You can do it from a template. You can open something. You can open the ones you have had so far. I can save as and above all. I can import or export individual rack spaces. This is a really cool thing. If you don't need all of them, you can just remove some or only load specific ones, which of course means less memory usage. That's a cool thing. Then you can open a new instance here, meaning you can open Gig Performer multiple times. That's basically everything. For the other menus, you can also open an existing instance, which can be deleted. You can import songs, which is important for the set list. You can also export it, and we will eventually cover lyrics and chords. The same goes for scripts. When you go to Edit here, you can switch between the widget and the edit mode at the top. It's really just the 2 buttons up here. That's all there is to the switch. Then I can create a new rack space here. I can duplicate what I have selected. I can delete one. Look at the details of the rack space. Then you can jump into a specific one. You can create a new variation. This is one here, for example. These are variations, so this is my rack space. And here I have variations in it. So now it's loading again. You can also delete them, and you know how to copy and paste for various things. Duplicate, select all, undo. Here you can sort the rack spaces by program change, by the program change number, or by name. You can reset the program change assignments in various pious ways, and you can insert a plugin, which I will show you. Under View, there are a few things you can display, such as panels in front view, which you can display directly. This is essentially the same as above. If you go to the set list, you can cycle through views, switching between them when you click. With this combination, you can hide the current rack space, and you can zoom in and out. You can also do this here using a keyboard shortcut, exactly on the Mac by using Options and simply scrolling. Then we have a lot of options here under Options, specifically for adjustments. Just click on it, and we see here General Display, which is basically the same. I can click on it individually or go through it here. You can set what happens at startup, for example, whether it should search for new plugins. and what the initial view is. It's actually quite simple. You can tell it to start the last gig, which is a project that contains everything, and the last activated workspace. It can automatically check for updates. I always have this on, which has not been a problem so far, and has not affected performance. And here you can set the master trim level, which should be the same as the knob I showed you above. However, I'm not entirely sure about that. You can set it at startup so that it isn't too loud right away. What is very cool is the predictive loading. You can tell it to load only the next 7 rack spaces, or as many as the computer can handle. But this only makes sense if you are not jumping through set lists, but going in order. I could also enter 3 here now, then it will only load the next 3 rack spaces, which of course saves processor and memory. Then you have the sync start-stop via the Ableton link here. If you use Ableton, you can synchronize the start-stop so that it starts simultaneously. You can have the program numbers assigned automatically, and you can set it to close without saving. Of course, that doesn't make much sense from my perspective. Then, at the bottom, you have the option to influence the metronome, turning it on or off, and adjusting the volume. You can select samples here that you want to use if you are not satisfied with the standard sample, and you can choose both for the beat and for the accent. I have both set to the same one now because we don't need the one, but just play through on the click. And here I can route the metronome to specific outputs of my interface. I have it set to 5 and 6, and I am sending it to the drummer and the mixing console. Then you can look at a few things here via the display. I'm not going to go through everything in detail now, otherwise I think we wouldn't finish today. You can set how the plugins react when you insert them, such as whether the display opens immediately. You can enter touch-friendly number editing here, which means that when using a touchscreen, you can input the numbers more easily and set it to start in full screen mode. Tooltips can be hidden if they are not needed. Then you can change the font size for some items here. For a widget, you can tell it that it parameter or how he should display the parameters in a list, and that he should always show widget groups. What widget groups are, I will show in another video. I think it just changes the colors. Here I can choose an input device and an output device. I don't know if it's the same on Windows. I'm using a Mac, and here I can generally choose the input and output interface separately. I believe that this doesn't work at all on Windows, so this is currently only for Mac. Then I can select which input channels I want to have active. Since I don't need any of them, they can be turned off. Apparently this consumes less or supposedly saves processor load, as I read somewhere in a forum. Whether this is really the case, I haven't checked, but I actually don't need them. Here I have already turned off 7 and 8 anyway, because my XR18 is programmed the same way. And this way I have the assignments of my widgets the same, since I only ever have output 1 to 6. It doesn't matter what interface is behind it anymore, only output 3. That means I can now use any interface with 6 outputs, or, if it has more, I just have to limit it to 6 outputs at that point. Then you can select the sample rate down here. They are down there. Depending on the devices you have connected, this means I might not be able to select everything. I can select my audio buffer size here. You have to decide for yourself how powerful the computer is and how you cope with the latency, whether you can handle it or not. Then you can export these audio settings and also import them if you use others in between. Global media is a cool feature. You can assign a specific controller to certain functions here, such as next variation and previous variation. Then you can click on Edit and either manually select the controller or use Learn MIDI for selected item, which can also be done in the widgets. Then you simply press the MIDI part, the key, the button or the knob that you want, and it automatically recognizes it, allowing you to choose between momentary and non-momentary. That's a really cool thing. Then you can set here. At the bottom where it should accept program changes from, I haven't selected anything now. And down here, you can further adjust a few settings related to program changes and MIDI data in general. So you can set a few visual options for the set list. Again, MIDI applies here. This global MIDI is essentially relevant for the view we are currently in. And here you can set these values separately for the set list mode. Otherwise, the same next song function works in the set list as I have set here under media. Then I can select a folder here for the lyrics. Unfortunately, they only work in Chord Pro format. I would have liked to be able to simply insert PDFs somewhere. It's also mentioned somewhere on the wish list, but I'm not sure if it will be implemented. The recording menu is the same as the one below when you press it. We just covered that. Then you can turn the MIDI ports on and off that you want to use. I once dealt with OSC to control my XR from here. You can enter the data here. Those who are familiar with it know what to do. I don't know. I need to search. Then you can set up some basic data for scripting. Scripting allows you to do certain things with small programs. I will also show this again in another video. And here you can load extensions if you want to. I don't have any in there yet. We also have that all options can be exported and imported, and that all scripts are recompiled. Under Windows, you can look at the plugin manager in this field. Here you can see all the plugins, which I need to sort out because I don't always need VST3 audio unit in the VST. You can simply turn them off and then they won't consume resources anymore. No energy, and are not yet loaded, and above all, not displayed yet. I will just turn off a few now. If I save this, it will also be gone. Down here, you can see the ones that are already deactivated. You can press scan again and manage. There you can do a few things. You now know where to find it. The manager is a cool thing. We will go into that separately in a longer video, as it is a bit more complicated. You can assign aliases here, which means I can assign a name to a keyboard. For example, an alias for the SL73, and then I can connect various keyboards without having to reconnect because I have my alias in this rack. I have my X piano connected, so my Studio Logic number, and also the SL73, so I already have two different variants here and can simply change the assignment. Otherwise, one would have to change the MIDI inputs here every time, or simply use a global MIDI input, which is not always sensible. Let's go into detail about this again. Then we have a global MIDI monitor, where you can see what comes in and out. Relatively self-explanatory. You can display song, lyrics, and chords here. I don't use this yet because the Chord Pro feature annoys me a bit. The MIDI assignments can be displayed here. This is what I have set. I can look at and change the content folder here if I want. Now I find that I can measure the device latency here. I don't even know if I've done that before or if I need it. I don't need it at all. So here you can also display the script editor if you use it. We will show that again. I will also demonstrate it in another video. Now we have already seen a rough overview, and I would say that in the next videos we will go into more detail, just like in the videos you have seen so far. But this way you might find the things you need fundamentally and then make some progress on your own.